and I'm excited, man. I'm excited about the moves being made this off season with the new coordinator hires. I'm excited, Kyle. I'm excited. I kind of feel like Coach Saban was forced to do it.
Mm-hmm.
We know he can be stubborn sometimes. We know, some coaches. Well, maybe one coach, Pete Golden, he kept a little too long, and it's obvious to me, Kyle, what it is. And I know people in Alabama don't want to hear it, but our dynasty right now is kind of on life support.
Mm-hmm.
We got a guy in Athens, Georgia. Nick Saban Jr., who's ran off two straight,
Mm-hmm.
and people don't want to hear it, and they're going to get in the comments and call me an idiot and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But if Kirby run off three straight, Kyle, you think David Pollock told Nick Saban to his face that Georgia runs college football? If Kirby runs off three straight, our dynasty effectively it's going to essentially be dead. And I think he looked in the mirror and said, Pete Golden and Bill O'Brien is not going to stop what's going on in Athens.
Mm-hmm.
I got to make a change, and I got to make it right now. And I think he had a come to Jesus moment about it's time. I've been hearing it for the last 3 years about this Pete Golden guy. I got to do it. I got to pull the trigger. I love the Kevin Steele hire. It's an old school DB, an old school defensive coordinator. He's a DB coach. They say he coached linebackers also. I love it. I love the hire. I love the Tommy Rees hire. I think that we needed some young, fresh blood in there. The offensive coordinator, I talked to Nick about it early in the season. We need to go young on the offensive side.
Mm-hmm.
I just felt like Bill O'Brien was stale. He was older, and he's where he belongs at in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
So I like what we're doing. I like the Malik Benson. I like everything we got going on right now. And I feel like the quarterback situation it'll shake out on his own, and the best guy wins. I don't have no dog in the fight. I like Ty. I like Jalen. Whoever is going to get us to where we need to go, that's who I want on the field.
Let me ask you a question, let me ask you a question, kind of getting back to your original point about Georgia and the dominance that they've shown over these last two seasons. And if they can make another run, that would be 3 in a row. Clearly that dynasty, we're kind of all waiting for that. I mean, Georgia's been a bad moon rising for, several seasons and now putting it together. And I think, let me ask you this. Do you feel that last year's Georgia offense, like they were able to kind of get into this speed game? Because you look to the wide receivers that they had. You look to the wide receivers that Alabama didn't have. Like, as soon as Georgia opened up their offense, and I saw it from the get-go, like their first game of the season when Stetson Bennett was throwing to their weapons, I was like, oh, these guys transformed their offense. And now they have I think that because they continue to model after Alabama, they're recruiting the same players, right? But now you have this offense that is opened up. I think that's made them even more dangerous.
It's more dangerous. I mean, Kirby has copied us to the T, Kyle. You know that from when he left. He took the recruiting board with him.
Yep.
Everything that he is installing in Athens is what we were or what we are. And I mean, it's getting to the point. So I go back to, I think Coach Saban had to come to Jesus moment. He said, "Look, man, I got to stop this dude. And these two coordinators I got, they're not going to get it done. I'm not going to stop him with them." So I love it. I love the fact that he went out and he got these new coordinators. This kid, Tommy Rees, that nobody really knows about, come from Notre Dame. Well, he didn't have the talent in Notre Dame that he's going to have in Tuscaloosa. So I love it because at the end of the day, I feel like we right there. I feel like only thing I'm more or less worried about is, Coach Saban is big on the experience. And I think sometimes over the last couple of years, we didn't have the best player on the field. We had the most experienced player. Well, in this year, I'm hoping Kevin Steele tells him, well, I think Caleb Down, I'm using an example, Kyle. If Kevin Steele tells him, well, I think Caleb Down or Devontae Smith or Christian Story, I think they're better than Malachi Moore. I think I want to go with them. I understand Malachi Moore got a lot of experience, but every time I see Malachi Moore, he's running behind the defender. He's chasing somebody who's in front of him, who the quarterback is clearly, targeting to throw the ball to. So I'm hoping this year that the best players get on the field, because you can't get experience, Kyle, until you get on the field.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to hear about, well, this guy got experience, but he's not the best player.
Mm-hmm.
Put the best players on the field, and we'll live with our result. That's like the previous caller. He said the transfer portal. We all know if Eli Ricks played in that Tennessee game, that wide receiver for Tennessee wasn't scoring 5 touchdowns on Eli Ricks.
Mm-hmm.
But, we had Terrion Arnold out there. I don't think Terrion Arnold was better than Eli Ricks.
Mm-hmm.
Kirby is doing what Nick Saban used to do. Is Kirby's putting his best players out there on the field. He's going to live or die with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope we get back to that. Put the best players on the field. We're going to live and die with it. So that's what I'm hoping we get back to. I'm just hoping this is a turnaround. We got to get to the playoffs. And most importantly, we got to stop Georgia, Kyle.
Yeah.
I mean, we got to. We can't kid ourselves no more about this. This season in 2023 is we got to stop Georgia. We cannot let Georgia win another championship. They can't run all 3 in a row.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you feel about it, but that's how I'm looking at this whole season. We got to stop Georgia.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, and that's one of the biggest storylines going into the season. I think there's 2 of them, right? Can Georgia make another run? That is clearly the biggest storyline in college football, and I think obviously they can. They have the makings to do it. This is a dynasty that is getting going over there. And then the other one is who's going to be the quarterback at Alabama to follow the lineage of these great quarterbacks that Alabama has had, right? We talked about, Tua, we talked about Mac, we talked about Jalen, who just played in the Super Bowl. And now you talk about who's going to, replace Bryce Young at the quarterback position. So I think those are the biggest things. But I think overall in college football, Nick Saban, remember when David Pollock told him about Georgia, and you saw Nick Saban's face, and social media went crazy on that. But you're right. He made changes to do that. And when you're at the big position, the CEO like Nick Saban is, he has to make those tough decisions. He had to get rid of Bill O'Brien, and he had to get rid of Pete Golding. Clearly, those guys had opportunities, but bringing in the young Tommy Rees, I think, is great. When you look to Notre Dame's offense, they were able to be very versatile, especially with that tight end group, which I think Alabama is excited about. And there's some players there, CJ Dupree, Amari Niblack, that can really, create some opportunities for their offense. And I love the fact, like you said, you went with the younger guy, Tommy Rees, at the offensive standpoint, because you have to keep that young offensive mentality that college football is. And then on the defensive side, you went with someone, Kevin Still, who's been at Alabama now for, I think, 3 times under Nick Saban. And when I talk about Kevin Still, you'll probably hear me say this a million times. When I first got here to Alabama and Alabama went down to Auburn beat the living crap out of Alabama in the trenches everywhere. Yeah, and that was the first time that I ever seen Alabama be beat up. And Kevin Still was the DC. So I don't look to Kevin Still at Miami as a DC. I look at what he was able to do with a couple years under his belt at Auburn, kind of that old school mentality that he's bringing to Alabama's defense.
Yeah, I agree, Kyle. I agree 100%. And I also think